someone were to have funds in their PAC, which I do, if I were to participate in this program, I would have to return those funds. Is that accurate or no?
So if they're in your candidate political committee, you would need to return them after filing your notice of intent and pay a penalty for having collected them outside of the context of the rules. But then could get certified if you met the certification requirements.
Okay, so could I stop you on that?
Yes.
So how can you tell? I have a PAC that's been ongoing. My PAC's been alive for, I think, 12 years now. The funds get used for a variety of purposes. They get used for sponsorships, tables. They get used for other initiatives. Most recently, for example, I made a contribution to the regional housing bond, and they could also be used for the purposes of re-election. How do you make that differentiation?
We're talking about a candidate's political committee or a PAC separate from the candidate's political committee?
It is the candidates.
Okay. So we require, once a person has filed their notice of intent, at the next reporting deadline, they need to report all of their activity in that political committee, from the beginning of the election cycle. And if there are funds in that political committee already, they can transfer up to $5,000 of those funds as seed money into the account they're going to use for the public money to come into and to make all of their expenditures out of. So what they'll need to do is essentially freeze the old account so that they can't use it to support their election while they're participating candidate.
So as long as it's sequestered, if it is sequestered separately, it could still be used for those other purposes. It just could not be used for the furtherance of a local race. Is that a fair way of stating it? I just don't understand it.
Well, so if it's an account separate from the candidate's political committee,
Right, so what
it
if
could be
you create an
used.
entirely new PAC just for the purpose of participating in the public election cycle?
So there are two rules that this relates to. So one set of rules, if it's your candidate committee, then you basically have to freeze any of the money that was raised prior to the election cycle, and then have a separate account that you're spending, bringing money into for as a participating candidate and spending money out of. If it's a separate political entity that's not the candidate's political committee, then it can continue to do its business as long as it doesn't take any actions that supports your candidacy or opposes one of your opponents.
Okay, and who would make that determination? Let me give you just a crazy example. Let's say we had a 6th congressional district in the state of Oregon, and it was in Portland, and we had a congressional candidate who had $750,000 in their PAC, and they decide, hey, I'd really like to run for the city council, I'd like to run for mayor or whatever. Walk me through that. Does that mean that they could not use the $750,000 in their PAC for any political purpose while they are running, and they would establish a separate PAC for the purposes of the election? Is that a correct interpretation?
Well, so one of the scenarios we were thinking through with the rules was, what if someone thinks they're running for one race at a different level that doesn't have a public financing program, and so they're raising money and spending money according to the state rules, not the program rules. And then something happens, a seat opens up, for example, and they think, actually, I'd like to run for that seat at the city level. In that case, all they have to do is, if they want to use that account that they'd already been raising money into and spending money out of, but not according to program rules, they just need to remedy any rule they've broken. Pay, return contributions that were in excess of the limits, or cure any prohibited expenditures, pay a penalty, and then apply for certification.
Who's going to do that?
So that's how it works. We're working that scenario.
Okay, so and just to make sure I understand this, as long as there is a sequestered independent PAC related to the race at the municipal level, and the other resources are definitively not spent for the furtherance of that campaign, you can still participate using that new PAC.
You got to freeze the money.
Is that correct?
So the other rule is that you can't
Get you to say yes or no.
Sure, I know. So the other rule is that you
The other
can't
rule.
solicit or direct contributions to an entity
Right.
other than your campaign committee
Okay.
that spends money on your race. So if you have already done so and it's already spent some money on your race, then you pay a penalty according to the rules.
And one final question related to this. And we don't necessarily have to nail these answers down today, but I'm just giving you some of my concerns that I think
You
we're going to
pay a
have to have
penalty for
some
money that's been given.
very clear, definitive rules around. Who gets to decide? Let's say that you're right, and that I've established a separate PAC, and we have funds going in from the public elections process, and somebody says, but hey, wait a minute, you are, through your other PACs, supporting a fundraising effort or a dinner for a key constituency, let's say Planned Parenthood or NARAL, Pro-Choice Oregon, that could have an impact on this race. Is that a contribution to the race or isn't? And who gets to decide? Who is the definitive decider?
So the director of the Open Accountable Elections makes the
director.
initial determination and sends a letter, announcing a penalty or sometimes decertification. Then the candidate can then request reconsideration if they believe that that determination was made in error. And if that's not resolved to their satisfaction, they can do a formal appeal, and we're working with the state administrative law judges to handle the formal appeals process.
Okay, good. And then last but not least, and I may have misinterpreted this in the proposed rules, it appears that the administrator has the authority to change the rules unilaterally for a period of up to 1 year. Is that accurate?
That's right, that's emergency rulemaking.
And what kind of rules are subjected, what's the
Anything.
latitude there? What is the span of control over those kinds of unilaterally made rules?
The same rulemaking authority as the law provides,
Which is what?
which is, it's
About everything.
essentially this list, the list that I kind of listed out earlier, and then any other rules necessary for the administration of the program.
And that's similar to other administrative rules that the director of the bureau gets to make changes. As I said at the beginning, normally these rules would indeed come to council, but we wanted them to.
Well,
I'll stew on that. for a
after
while.
1 year,
I appreciate
and
your
then they go to
responses.
council
Thank you.
to
Commissioner
become
Hardesty.
permanent.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to say, I was totally with you until you tried to answer the mayor's questions. And then I got more confused than I've been about this process, because I never heard you say yes or no to the mayor's question about if I've got this campaign fund that's separate from my city campaign fund. Can I still use that campaign fund for all the legal purposes that I would be able to use that campaign fund for, as long as it's not impacting the race that I'm running for with the city public finance system?
That's a yes.
Thank you. I'm just waiting for that, right? Okay, so those two can be totally separate and operate separately, as long as I'm not commingling those funds.
Commingling or using one to support another, yes.
A dubious purpose like getting elected.
No way to track that. There would be no way to track that. No.
Very good. Any further discussion? Very well. Is there any public
And
testimony?
I'm
on
gonna
this
get
item?
thrown into this.
Yes, we have 3 people signed up.
Very good.
Come on up, White, Charles, Bridge, Crane, Johnson, and Maggie.
Thank you, everyone, for signing up today. 3 minutes each, please, and for the rest.
How are you going to enforce that?
Yes, my name is Lighting. I represent Lighting Superhumanity. Now, so it's my understanding is that one of the reasons this program is being put together is to take in $500 from a candidate, and then the city will match those funds. Now, if I'm incorrect on that, you're going to have to explain that, because what I'm seeing here is that the city is wanting to subsidize this, the candidate, and then put a lot of restrictions on what they're going to be able to do. as far as running as a candidate. And where I find this rather interesting is that you have a penalty system in place to come back if you don't report properly, you'll be penalized. We can go up to $10,000 in penalties. We'll do a 12% interest rate. We'll contact the city attorney. We may seek civil penalties, we may not. And then on the rules itself, you say, well, we can pass an amendment to change the rules, and those rules are good for 12 months. There'll be no city council approval, but if you want to make those rules permanent after 12 months, then we'll put it up in front of the city council. And then you counter back and you say, well, this isn't going to be political if we run a lot of penalties on this candidate, and they're giving us maybe information that's late. And there's a lot of issues here that just opens up a situation to where, let's just say I wanted to run against the mayor. And I have city council members that don't like me because of the way I've spoke out against them in the past. And I signed up for this program, and then you have some director, and they go, oh, that's lightning. Oh, boy, look at this. A little bit late here, this, that. Oh, well, he's got this separate fund over here. Well, we'll let it slide over here, but oh, lightning. This is our time, Lightning. This is our time to let you know how government really works. And you know, here's my problem. You're trying to be open and accountable here. But I think this is purely political on jeopardizing a candidate's position to be able to move forward. And such as what the mayor said, he's already has funds over here. Now he's supposed to possibly freeze these funds in some manner, then report these funds over here, and then come back here and then get approval. Oh, well, you're in violation, more penalties. Well, I'd like to have access to every document and every penalty on any candidate, because everything that comes up, I want the media to have everything. Are you going to allow me to do that, to hand everything to the media?
Yes,
Fair enough.
everything will be posted online and everybody will be able to see it.
Okay, and this is my option if I'm a candidate to go into this program, correct? So wouldn't that influence maybe a vote? Because this person doesn't want to go into this program, but it looks open and accountable, we'll be viewing this. This person does not. Wouldn't that kind of influence that vote at the end of the day by the public, possibly? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Just to correct your initial statements,
Yep.
the rule is that you can only accept $250 from any Portland resident.
Okay.
And then only the first $50 is matched.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Hi, I'm Maggie. I don't want to run for office, but I want to comment on the PAC-related issue first. It's too bad that we've got this PAC situation where you just run for election all term instead of having just, here's your public money to run for 6 weeks, and that's it, you're done, and the rest of the time, you're running government instead of running for office. Do you see what I'm saying? Rather have you fixing and, government problems than just running for office. That's not a job. And then the second thing I would like to say on voting access and disability, voting access and new citizens, voting access and, formerly incarcerated, voting access for low-income marginalized citizens. I want to comment about voting access. I worked on Obama's 2012 campaign. I covered the university and I covered the low-income and disabled people. And I want to tell you that they feel very marginalized, especially disabled people. I would go to the low-income apartments and, I would explain to them that I couldn't tell them how to vote, but I could tell them who the people were and who, which district they were in, and that was it. And at the end of the campaign, I had, so many envelopes, running back, when the clock was running down, that I had to stuff some envelopes into my shirt because I had no more room to carry any back to the district. And, whether they were voting Republican or Democrat, I consider it a triumph when a low-income disabled person votes. And, you know, you can go back in my history and look, I bring blind people and deaf people to the governor's office and help them write notes to the governor.
She said
And,
250.
I just think we need better campaign literature because the newspaper campaign literature is really bad. We need like Reader's Digest, big print, color photos, show which district each person is in, what time their drop-in is, when they're available, all that, email. You know, and you know what disabled people love? They love it when the campaign people come with the boxes and they come to the apartments and they don't have to go to the polling booth. They love them to come and pick up the envelopes and take them right back to the precinct district and drop them right off. So the student